Simone Segouin, the 18-year-old girl who captured 25 Nazis alone. August 19th, 1944. 6:14 in the morning. Chartres, France. The streets are still dark, still heavy with 4 years of occupation. A girl crouches behind a stone wall. She's 18 years old. She weighs less than 50 kilograms. In her hands, she holds a German MP-40 submachine gun, a weapon she took from a soldier she had already disarmed. In front of her, 25 Wehrmacht soldiers, armed, waiting, unaware that the girl behind the wall is about to walk toward them alone. Not with backup, not with orders, with fury and a plan. Her name is Simone Segouin. The Germans call her a terrorist. The French resistance calls her Nicole. History will call her one of the most extraordinary fighters the liberation of France has ever produced. And on this August morning, in the half-light before Paris is free, she's about to do something no one would believe, unless they had a camera. There is a camera. There will be photographs. Photographs that the world will look at for the next 80 years and ask the same question. Who is she? This is who she is. Simone Segouin was born on September 18, 1925, in Chartres, in the Eure-et-Loire department of north-central France. She grew up in a working-class family in the village of Tivars, a small community where everyone knew each other and where the rhythms of life were shaped by agriculture, seasons, and the Catholic calendar. She was 15 years old when the Germans arrived. June 1940. France collapses in 6 weeks. The armistice is signed on June 22nd. German soldiers march down streets that French people have walked for centuries. The occupation begins. And with it, something shifts inside millions of ordinary French people. A deep, quiet, burning refusal. For some, that refusal stays quiet. For others, it becomes action. Simone Segouin was not the kind of person to stay quiet for long. She was, by all accounts, athletic, determined, and intensely practical. She worked as a bicycle courier for a time, a job that gave her something invaluable, an intimate knowledge of the roads, the checkpoints, the patterns of German patrols. She knew which roads were watched and which were forgotten. She knew how to move without being seen. She knew the land the way only someone who has grown up on it can know it. When she turned 17, she joined the Francs-Tireurs et Partisans, the FTP, a communist-aligned resistance network that operated across occupied France. She did not join because of ideology. She joined because her country was occupied, because she had seen what the Germans did, because she was 17 years old and felt the rage of it in her bones. Her code name was Nicole. She was given her first real mission before most girls her age had finished secondary school. The FTP was not a gentle organization. It was not a network for gathering intelligence or running underground newspapers. It fought. Sabotage, ambushes, assassinations of collaborators. These were its methods. And Simone Segouin, who was barely old enough to vote, who stood at roughly 160 meters and looked in any other context like a schoolgirl, became one of its most effective operatives in the Chartres region. Her first major operations involved bicycle-based intelligence gathering. This was not glamorous work. It meant cycling dozens of kilometers through checkpoints, memorizing what she saw, troop numbers, vehicle placements, supply routes, and delivering that information to FTP commanders, who would use it to plan sabotage missions. Every checkpoint was a gamble. The Germans searched bicycle couriers. They asked questions. They detained people on suspicion alone. And Simone Segouin, with her teenage face and her easy smile, passed through them again and again, carrying information that would help kill their colleagues. She was not passive in her bravery. She escalated deliberately and methodically. By early 1944, she was participating directly in sabotage operations. Railway lines were a priority target. The French railways were the circulatory system of the German occupation. They moved troops, equipment, ammunition, and the deportees being sent east to the camps. Disrupting them was not just tactically valuable. For those who understood what the trains carried, it was a moral imperative. Simone Segouin participated in multiple railway sabotage operations across the Eure-et-Loire department. The work was dangerous on a level that defies easy description. You approached a railway line in darkness, in silence, carrying explosives. You set the charges under the tracks or against a bridge support. You had a limited window. If a German patrol came, you had no good options. You ran, or you fought, or you died. She ran when she had to. She fought when she had to. She was 18 years old. By the summer of 1944, everyone in the resistance knew that the Allies were coming. The Normandy landings on June 6th had broken the strategic deadlock. The question now was not whether France would be liberated, it was when and what the resistance could do to help speed that liberation and protect French lives in the process. Simone Segouin's unit, operating under the broader structure of the FTP in the Chartres region, began preparing for the moment when the Germans would either fall back or be forced out. This was the most dangerous period in some ways. The Germans, knowing they were losing, became more brutal, more erratic, more willing to execute people on the faintest suspicion. Simone Segouin did not step back. She stepped forward. On August 19th, 1944, with the liberation of Chartres beginning and American forces pushing toward the city, the German garrison was in the process of partial retreat and partial defense. The streets were chaos, pockets of organized German resistance, scattered French fighters, civilians trying to stay alive. It was in this context that Simone Segouin did what she did. The details are attested by photographs and by her own later accounts. She approached a German position, 25 Wehrmacht soldiers, a number that sounds almost impossible in retrospect. She confronted them. She was armed, she was clearly part of the resistance, and she was operating with the authority and momentum of a liberation that the Germans could feel was happening around them. She captured all 25. Alone? This was not a Hollywood moment of guns blazing. It was something more complex and more human. The capture of soldiers who understood on some level that the war was ending badly, facing a girl who was entirely prepared to shoot them if they made the wrong choice. Courage, tactical intelligence, psychological force, and perfect timing. The 25 Germans surrendered to an 18-year-old girl with a submachine gun. What followed is one of the most reproduced images of the liberation of France. A photographer, it may have been Peter Johnson, though accounts differ, captured Simone Segouin walking through the streets of Chartres in the days after liberation. She's wearing a beret. She has a submachine gun in her hands. She looks young and serious and completely, utterly unafraid. The photograph went around the world. But Simone Segouin did not stop at Chartres. The liberation of Paris began on August 19, 1944, the same day as the Chartres events, when the Paris police force rose up against the Germans. Over the next 6 days, the capital was consumed by street fighting. The German garrison, under General Dietrich von Soltitz, was ordered by Hitler to burn Paris to the ground rather than surrender it. Soltitz, to his credit and to the city's eternal fortune, did not obey that order. But before the formal liberation on August 25th, there were 6 days of brutal urban combat. Resistance fighters, many of them young, many of them barely trained, all of them brave, fought block by block, barricade by barricade. Simone Segouin was among them. She traveled from Chartres to Paris and joined the fighting. She was photographed again, at barricades with her weapon with other fighters. She was one of hundreds of resistance members who put their bodies between the German garrison and the city they loved. On August 25th, General Charles de Gaulle walked down the Champs-Élysées. The liberation of Paris was complete. Simone Segouin was 19 days away from her 19th birthday. After Paris, she continued fighting. She was present at the Battle of the Falaise Pocket, one of the most decisive engagements of the Normandy campaign, where the German Army Group B was surrounded and nearly destroyed. She fought alongside regular French forces as they pushed east. She was, by any reasonable definition, a combat veteran, a teenager with more actual fighting experience than most adults. She was formally recognized as a member of the French armed forces. This was not a trivial distinction. It meant that her service was acknowledged, that she was not merely a partisan, not merely a civilian who had picked up a gun, but a soldier of France. What Simone Segouin felt during these months, what it meant to be 18 years old and carrying the weight of what she was doing, is something she addressed carefully in the years that followed. She spoke about the fear, not as a confession, but as a matter of fact. "You were afraid," she said. "Anyone who tells you they were not afraid is lying to you. The fear was real and constant, and you carried it alongside everything else, alongside the missions, the checkpoints, the explosives, the decisions that could not be undone." She spoke about the comrades she lost. The resistance was not invulnerable. People were captured, tortured, and shot. People she knew, people she had worked with, people who had been as young and as determined as she was, and who had run out of luck before the liberation came. She did not speak of the Germans she killed in the manner of someone who found it simple or clean. She was a teenager who had learned to use weapons in the service of her country's survival. The violence was real, and it had a cost, and she knew it. She was, in the end, not a symbol. She was a person, a young woman who had made a series of choices in impossible circumstances, and who had emerged on the other side of those choices with her life, her dignity, and her country intact. The end of the war found Simone Segouin alive, which was more than could be said for many of her comrades. She married. She had children. She built a life in post-war France, the quiet, ordinary life that her extraordinary actions had helped to make possible for millions of people who never knew her name. This is, in some ways, the most poignant part of the story. The liberation of France required thousands of people like Simone Segouin, young, brave, determined people who fought in the shadows and in the streets, who risked everything, and who then simply went home. No ticker tape parade, no permanent monument, just a life resumed. She was, for decades, known primarily to historians of the resistance and to those who recognized her face in the famous photographs, the girl with the beret and the submachine gun. But history, sometimes, remembers. In 2004, at the age of 78, Simone Segouin, Née Simone Segouin, resistance fighter Nicole, veteran of Chartres and Paris and the Falaise Pocket, was awarded the Légion d'honneur by the French government. It is France's highest order of merit. She lived to receive it. She was surrounded by family. She had never stopped being proud of what she had done. In 2019, she was 93 years old, and she was still giving interviews, still speaking about the war, still insisting that the story be told accurately, completely, and with respect for those who had not survived. She died on October 15, 2023, at the age of 97. Simone Segouin captured 25 German soldiers alone at 18 years old. She fought in the liberation of Paris. She fought at Falaise. She was one of the most documented female combatants in the French resistance. Documented not because she sought attention, but because a photographer was there, and because the image of a teenage girl with a submachine gun and absolute composure tells a truth that no amount of writing can fully capture. The truth is this: the liberation of France was not the achievement of armies alone. It was the achievement of millions of ordinary people who made extraordinary choices under unimaginable pressure. Some of those people were 18 years old. Some of them were girls. Some of them walked toward 25 armed soldiers when every sensible calculation said to walk away. The sensible calculation has never been sufficient justification for accepting occupation. Simone Segouin knew this at 18 years old. She knew it at 97. She will still be right when all of us are gone. If her story moved you, if you learned something today, if you felt the weight of what she carried, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We have more stories like this one, the stories that history almost forgot, told with the respect they deserve. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And whose story do you want us to tell next? The memory lives as long as we keep speaking it.